in the manicured suburbs of Greenwich, Connecticut, where ivy-clad mansions line the streets and wrought iron gates guard family secrets. Abigail Harper grew up under the suffocating weight of perfection. At 30, she stood at the edge of a life she'd carved for herself. Far from the glittering facade of her family's estate. To the world, the Harpers were untouchable, wealthy, connected, the kind of family whose cocktail parties drew senators and CEOs. But to Abigail, she was the black sheep, the daughter who dared to dream beyond the script her parents had written. Her father, Richard Harper, 62, was a titan in New York's financial world, a senior partner at a hedge fund with a reputation for turning millions into billions. To him, children weren't meant to be nurtured, they were assets, expected to yield returns. Her mother, Catherine, 58, a Vassar graduate, had traded her literary ambitions for a life of charity galas and luncheons, perfecting the art of smiling without a wrinkle. Abigail's older brother, James, 35, was their father's mirror image, a Yale-educated executive now running the family's investment firm. Married to a congressman's daughter, with twin boys in a $45 a year private school. Her younger sister, Olivia, 26, a former pageant star from Dartmouth, floated through life on the family trust, dabbling in art curation while dating a tech startup founder. And Abigail? She was the enigma, the middle child who never fit the Harper mold. It started early. While James pored over stock charts and Olivia twirled in designer dresses at fashion events. Abigail, at 13, was hunched over her mother's old Dell, teaching herself to code. She built her first app, a simple puzzle game, in Python. Her fingers flying across the keyboard as the world outside faded. When her peers shopped for prom gowns, Abigail spent her summer at a coding boot camp at Stanford, surrounded by humming servers and kids who spoke her language. But her passion was invisible to her family. One night, catching her coding at 3 a.m., her father scoffed. "That's for nerds who can't handle a real job." Catherine, sipping chamomile tea, added softly, "Staring at screens will ruin your eyes." Abigail, "No man wants a wife who lives in a computer." Her high school graduation was a turning point. Abigail scored the highest in math across the state, a feat that earned her a partial scholarship to Caltech. But her parents were absent, jetting off to a Napa Valley fundraiser. James was celebrated at a Manhattan gala for a Forbes op-ed on market trends. When Abigail shared her Caltech acceptance, her mother's response was a tight smile. "Engineering? That's no place for a Harper daughter. Wharton would have set you up for a proper life." They wanted her to study finance, snag an MBA from Harvard, and marry someone suitable, preferably a Wall Street heir with zero interest in tech. Abigail said no. She chose computer science, and every disappointed glance from her parents was a reminder of the cost. She tried to win them over. She emailed her research papers, but they went unread. She invited them to her senior project presentation, but Catherine cited a conflicting spa weekend. James texted, "Still chasing dreams, huh? Don't get lost." Abigail stopped sharing. She let them believe she was toiling away at some dead-end tech job. Maybe debugging apps for pocket change. They didn't know she'd bought a loft in Brooklyn with funds from her first startup pitch, while her father assumed she was scraping by in a rented studio. Deep down, Abigail wondered, would they ever see her as more than the Harper family's misstep? She didn't have an answer. But one thing was certain, she was done living in their shadow. At 17, Abigail rejected her parents' push for Wharton and applied to MIT. The day her acceptance letter arrived, she locked herself in her room, clutching the envelope, her heart racing with a joy she couldn't share. Downstairs, Catherine called out, "Abigail, keep it down. Olivia's rehearsing her speech for the gala." She folded the letter, tucked it away, and said nothing. No celebration followed. When her mother learned about MIT, she sighed. All those engineers in sweatshirts, glued to laptops, no social grace. Richard, flipping through the Financial Times, didn't look up. MITs for circuit geeks. Not Harper's. That fall, Abigail moved into a red brick dorm by the Charles River, her window framing Boston's skyline. Every night, she watched the city lights dance, the distant hum of the Red Line grounding her. She whispered to herself. You belong here. To survive, she juggled a full course load, taught for an intro to JavaScript class, and worked part-time at a biotech lab, entering data to cover textbooks, groceries, and a single birthday card for her Aunt Margaret, the only relative who remembered her birth date. In her sophomore year, Abigail found her calling, artificial intelligence for healthcare. At a tense Christmas dinner, she shared her vision of AI systems that could streamline hospital diagnoses, catching diseases faster. Catherine, serving roasted quail, said, "Healthcare? Are you training to be a nurse?" Richard smirked. "Learn to read a P&L statement before you talk about saving lives." Abigail didn't argue. She'd already aced 2 machine learning courses and was prototyping an algorithm to detect breast cancer early. To them, she was still the girl with weird hobbies. The air in the Harper estate was thick with the scent of French wine and white orchids. The kind of evening where every clink of crystal glasses carried the weight of old money and older expectations. Abigail Harper, now 30, stood at the threshold of her family's Greenwich mansion, her tailored black suit a quiet rebellion against the sequined gowns and pressed tuxedos swirling around her. It was her father Richard's 60th birthday. A lavish affair packed with Wall Street heavyweights and political insiders. But Abigail wasn't here to blend in. Tonight, she carried a truth that would shatter the Harper family's carefully curated narrative about her. 3 years ago, Abigail had poured her life savings, $47, into PulsePoint, a healthcare platform she built from scratch to connect patients with specialists. Cutting through the chaos of an overstretched medical system, she'd faced rejection after rejection, pitching to 36 investors who dismissed her as too young, too female, too inexperienced. But one woman, Grace Sullivan, a former hospital chain CEO, saw the fire in Abigail's vision. Her $150 investment was the spark that lit PulsePoint's rise. A pilot with St. Joseph's Hospital in Philadelphia slashed specialist wait times by 61% and doubled patient satisfaction. That success drew a $7.5 million Series A round from Riverside Ventures and Marlowe Capital. Then SoftBank came calling with $40 million, valuing PulsePoint at $100 million. Now, as Abigail stepped into the chandelier-lit dining room, her company was prepping for an IPO with a staggering $220 million valuation. And Forbes had just named her to its 30 under 30 list in health tech. She hadn't planned to announce it here. But when Richard raised his glass to toast family achievements, praising James for his fund's 12% returns and Olivia for her engagement to a tech mogul, Abigail felt the familiar sting of being erased. She stood, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "While we're celebrating success, I closed a $7.5 million Series A for PulsePoint this afternoon. SoftBank's investing $40 million next week. And we're valued at $100 million. Oh, and Forbes says I'm one to watch." The room froze. Her mother, Catherine, clutched her pearl necklace. James's smug smile vanished. Olivia's champagne flute hovered mid-air. Richard's eyes narrowed, as if recalculating the worth of the daughter he'd dismissed for years. Abigail didn't wait for applause. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the polished marble, leaving behind a silence heavier than the cashmere rug under their feet. By 11 p.m., she was back at PulsePoint's Kendall Square office, its glass walls glowing under Boston's skyline. The dev team was stress-testing a new update, pizza boxes strewn across composite desks. Abigail poured coffee, joined the coding sprint, and worked until 3 a.m. This was her family now, the people who believed in her when her blood relatives hadn't. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a call from Ethan, her SoftBank contact. "Abigail, the board just approved the $40 million. Your valuation's now $120 million. And CNBC wants you on air Monday. Press conference?" She smiled, glancing at her team still hunched over laptops. "Send the schedule. I'll confirm tonight." As she hung up, a text from James popped up. "SoftBank? Is that real? Let's talk collaboration." Then Olivia's Instagram story. A photo of Abigail at a tech summit. Captioned, "Proud of my sister. Changing healthcare," with a gold heart emoji. Even Catherine sent a bouquet with a note. "We're so proud. Abigail, let's be part of your journey." Abigail left the flowers in the conference room, untouched. Their sudden pride felt hollow, like applause for a show they'd refused to attend. She'd earned this moment the hard way. Back in her Somerville apartment, with a leaky AC and a second-hand couch, Abigail had coded PulsePoint's first lines alone, fueled by instant noodles and a belief that rural patients deserved better access to care. She'd scrubbed the office toilet herself to save money, worked under flickering LEDs, and borrowed friends to test the UI when funds ran dry. Now, PulsePoint was saving lives. 50,000 successful patient specialist matches and counting. When St. Joseph's reported a 50% drop in missed appointments, hospitals in Texas and Oregon came knocking. Abigail didn't need her family's validation anymore, but their attempt to claim her success stung. At Richard's birthday, they'd tried to cut her off financially, as if she'd been living off their scraps. "You've chosen your path," Richard had said, his voice cold. "The family invests in those who align with our values." Abigail had laughed, sharp and unapologetic. "I haven't taken your money since college. And my path just hit a $100 million valuation." Check the Wall Street Journal. Their faces, pale, stunned, were a victory she hadn't known she needed. Weeks later, Abigail launched the Horizon Fund, seeding it with $12 million from her personal stake. The fund supported young women in health tech and AI, starting with scholarships for 15 high school girls from low-income New Hampshire towns to attend MIT's summer coding camp. Each thank you letter was framed on the fund's office walls, a reminder of why she kept going. She hired Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Johns Hopkins to run it, ensuring its independence from PulsePoint. Abigail set firm boundaries with her family. She didn't attend Olivia's engagement party but sent a bouquet of lilies. She replied to James's text about his newborn daughter with a brief congrats and nothing more. When Catherine invited her to a charity gala, Abigail agreed to meet, not at their usual upscale venue, but at a South End cafe serving roast beef sandwiches with passion fruit sauce. Richard arrived, tie-less for once, and slid a small box across the table. "Your grandfather's watch. It's yours." Abigail didn't touch it. "I don't need it," she said, her voice steady. "I've built my own legacy." At the gala, Catherine approached her on the balcony, the Boston breeze softening the moment. "I was wrong, Abigail. I don't understand your world. But I want to try." Abigail looked at her hands, the same ones that once trembled under her mother's criticism. "I forgive you," she said, "but I'm not the daughter you wanted. I'm the one I chose to be." The PulsePoint IPO was a cloudless April morning in Times Square. Nasdaq's giant screen flashed the company's logo, a blue heartbeat pulsing upward. Abigail's team stood below, waving signs, their matching polos a stark contrast to the suits around them. She spoke one sentence. "This isn't just a company. It's proof that women in tech don't need permission to change the world." By day's end, PulsePoint was valued at $220 million, with Abigail holding 47% ownership. That night, she celebrated with her team at a riverside taco joint, laughing over cold beers and chili fries. No laptops, no pitches, just the people who'd believed in her from the start. Back at her waterfront loft, Abigail opened an email from a 17-year-old girl in Maine. "I want to be like you, not for the money, but because you walked alone and built a path for others." She read it twice, her eyes tracing the words. This was her true inheritance, not her family's approval, but the chance to light the way for someone else. Abigail Harper didn't just build a company. She redefined what it means to be enough. In a world that tried to dim her, she became the brightest spark, proving that success isn't about fitting in, it's about standing out. What do you think of Abigail's choices? Would you have drawn the same boundaries with her family, or found a way to bridge the gap? Share your thoughts below, and stay tuned for more stories of unbreakable spirits.